So back into my Elastic Beanstalk console, I can go ahead and create a new environment. Now we're going to get a slightly different UI. It's because we already created one environment, so now we're able to get a bit more options. And so as you can see, overall, it asks me to select two things. Do you want to create a web server type of environment that serves HTTP requests, or do you want to create a worker environment to perform tasks on a schedule or do workloads on demand? And so as we've seen before, we want to do a web server environment because we get a load balancer out of it, and this is great. So we'll click on select, and here we get a bit more information onto how we deploy things. For example, the environment name before was just called My First Web App Beanstalk Env. Now I'm just going to call this one prod, because we're going to make a little bit of a setup that looks like prod. Here you can have a domain that you can choose, and you can check its availability. For example, my app in prod by Stefan, probably is available. Yep, excellent. And we can just use that URL from now on, and I will say, this is my production environment. Okay, now we have a platform to choose. And so from before, remember, we chose Node, but here we get really good idea of all the things we can run for as far as platform goes. So we'll click on node.js, but as you can see, we can get Java, Ruby, Python, Docker, etc., etc. We can also choose a custom platform. As I said, this is more an advanced feature and we won't be using in this course. Now for the application code, we're still going to use sample application. We're not going to upload our own code right now because we don't have it, and we can't choose an existing version because we have not uploaded versions before. Remember, the sample application is not something you actually upload. We can click on configure more options, and this is going to be way more interesting. So let's click on configure more options, and now we get a whole panel with a lot of different configurations. So far, we have set up our previous environment in low cost. We actually didn't enable it or select it, but this is what happened. We set up our old environment in low cost because it was feature eligible. But I want to set up my next one in high availability. Now, you don't have to do it on your end because it may cost you some money, but I want to show you how it works for me so you get a good idea of how Elastic Beanstalk works. So I will choose high availability, and let's see what everything changes. So as I swipe through, you see each panel on the left-hand side. For example, if you look at the capacity, right now in terms of low cost, we are with a single instance. And if you click on high availability, we get load balancing, auto scaling in any AZ, and we get between 1 and 4 instances. Same for load balancer. Right here, because I'm in high availability, it is configured. But if I click on low cost, it will not appear right here. Obviously, you can choose between these two, and you can also provide a custom configuration if you wanted to basically edit all these things. So let's have a look. The software we can modify, and we can choose the kind of proxy we want to run, the kind of Node.js version we want to have, the kind of command we start with Node, if we want to store the logs in S3, if we want to stream the logs to CloudWatch logs, and if we want to provide some environment properties to our whole environment. So I'll just click on save. Here, we can customize the EC2 instances, such as the instance type, the image ID, if we want to have EBS volumes, security groups, etc., etc. So there's lots of different configuration. Capacity is going to be more around how you want to load. So, okay, it's going to be load balanced, and we're going to have between 1 and 4 instances, but you can obviously change this. In terms of AZ, we can say, okay, I want any of these 3, but you can say any 1, any 2, or any 3. And then we can say, what do we want to scale on? So we can scale on CPU utilization or network out or whatever you want, really. And then you can choose whatever scaling metric you want. So I'll click on save because I want to keep the defaults. They're great. In terms of load balancer, we can choose a classic load balancer or application load balancer. And by default, as you can see, it's selected a classic load balancer for me. But we can definitely choose application load balancer and get more settings. And as you can see now, the screen will change and we get different options. I will go ahead and keep it as classic load balancer. I don't want to fiddle around too much with the defaults just to not make things complicated. But as you can see, basically we have control over all the settings that we have when we use a load balancer straight from the EC2 console. Rolling updates and deployment. For now, I am not modifying this and not showing it to you because I have a lecture dedicated to this section. The exam really asks a lot of questions around what happens when you update Elastic Beanstalk, and that deserves its own lecture. For security, we have service roles, and we can define instance profiles, etc., etc. So all the stuff we learned before from IAM roles, we can define it here. Monitoring, we can set monitoring, notifications, network, database. So here we are able to actually create an RDS database. But what you need to know is that if you do create an RDS database through this, then you will basically have it deleted or lost if you delete the environments. So sometimes it is actually better to externalize an RDS database to Beanstalk, because then it won't be deleted if you delete your Elastic Beanstalk environments, but something to know, right? And so when we're ready, I'll just click on high availability just to make sure that everything will be configured properly. When we're ready, I will go ahead and click on create environments. And so through all these options, now we can see that this deployment is going to be a little bit more complicated. The reason being is that now we have a load balancer, now we have an auto-scaling group, now we're going to scale between 1 and 4 instances, and so the deployment should happen, but will take a little bit more time. Okay, so it took maybe 5 minutes this time, but my application is finally deployed. I want to go to events just so we can retrace what happens, and as you can see, there's a lot of events. So this time, we also used an S3 bucket to store the data, and we have created a security group. There was a load balancer that was being created, another security group that was created, and this one I guess is for my EC2 instances. There was an auto-scaling group configuration that was created. There was instances added, auto-scaling group added, and then there was a bunch of basically policies and handled and alarms and all this stuff. So this time, because we had set up a high availability setup, well, there's a bit more components that got created. Let's go back to our dashboard, and now we can probably look at the EC2 console. So if we refresh the EC2 console, now we see that the instance with the Elastic IP belongs to my first environment that I've created, while this instance right here that just got created belongs to the prod environment, okay? Now if we look at the security groups, we can see that a lot more security groups got created, and we can always look at the name to see in which environments they belong. So these 2 security groups got created and they belong to the Beanstalk prod environment. And in terms of the rule, we can see that this one is basically from my EC2 instances, okay? And it allows HTTP on protocol on port 80 from my load balancer group, and my load balancer group itself allows traffic on port 80 from anywhere. So this is the kind of setup we've seen before when we did our load balancer setup. Finally, we can go to load balancers, and we can see that there was a load balancer being created for us. So the naming convention may look obscure, but because everything is handled through Elastic Beanstalk, you actually don't have to to manage these resources one at a time. This type is a classic load balancer, which is fine for now just to prove some points. And we can look at the instances, and we have our instance right here. It's in service, and we can see how many instances we have across AZs. And then finally, we can look at launch configuration, and there was a launch configuration created for my prod environment. So they're right here. And then if I go to auto-scaling groups themselves, I can see that I have an auto-scaling group that was created. So one of these, okay, this one got created because it's min 1 and max 4. And this auto-scaling group has the scaling policies we defined from before using the network, and has the number of instances that we wanted to have created by default, which is 1. So all in all, you can see how in just a few clicks on the Elastic Beanstalk console, we got ready with a full-blown environment that had load balancer, auto-scaling groups, security groups, all configured sort of perfectly, right? And obviously, we get this URL that we have created from before, and so I can access my app using this URL that I've set up from before, my app in prod, and we get the exact same output as before, except now we have a load balancer and EC2 instances. Obviously, you can edit the configuration clicking on here, and we won't do it. And if you go back one up, now we can see that we have 2 environments. We have the dev environment, what I call dev environment, and we have the prod environment on the right-hand side, and they're a bit different in terms of how the application got deployed. So I hope that makes sense. I hope that was helpful, and I will see you in the next lecture.